Saturday live stream here on the Jazz Mental channel. Quick shout out to those of you that have shown up early: Alan, Fabrizio, Rich, Peter, and for everyone who's about to join us over the next little while, thanks for being here. Our Saturday live streams would not be anything without you, so thanks for coming. As always, we have a topic for this Saturday, and that is we're going to discuss the music of Hoagy Carmichael, a tune called Georgia on My Mind, which is really considered a ballad, gospel tune. It's been around since 1930, and it was actually popularized by Ray Charles in the 60s, the great Ray Charles. And so we're actually going to talk about the tune, and as Ray would do certain things, blues licks, things like that, we're going to look at the reharmonization that I did for the head. And I'm going to share the sheet music link with you right off the top of this session, which I normally do. So let me post that in the chat now, and I'm going to pin it to the top of the chat so that it's there throughout the presentation. There you go. If you have difficulty downloading it, just give it a minute. The website will catch up. Sometimes we send a few too many people. And Don, thanks for coming. Eric and Mary, good to see you. Just so everyone knows, we are open to all questions and comments in the chat area. What I'm going to do is just quickly display the sheet music on your screen, which is the entire head section, which was played and posted on the Jazz Pianist group, and it got a very solid reaction, not just for shares and comments and for likes, but just the comments that I did receive were everybody seemed to want a transcription of this. It's actually, the full thing is 12 pages long. You'll hear about that by email. I'm sharing the entire head section, which is basically AABA structure. Now, it was transcribed by, and forgive me if I get this wrong, it's my Polish transcriber, and it did take him a very long time to do this. If you notice at the top, his name is, and I want to get this right, it's like Przemysław. And I talked to my friend at Big Head Winery yesterday, and I showed him the name, and that's how obviously he pronounced it way better than I do. But a quick shout out to Przemysław for transcribing the sheet music. I really appreciate it. I also want to just check in with you and make sure that everyone can hear me fine. I know that last week people at the beginning were talking about the mic being a little too loud. If you could let me know that the levels are fine, that would be awesome. If it needs to go up or down, and also the piano. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sheet music off your screen. Please go download it. You can follow along. And I'm going to play very close to what is transcribed. It might not be perfect, but it's going to be very close. So I'll take that off your screen. I will mute my microphone and pull up the transcription for myself on another screen and play it, like I said, as close as possible. And then I'll play a little bit of soloing, and then we'll come back and start discussing all the nuances of this tune. Once again, thanks for being here, Mary and Don and the rest of you, Vincent. I appreciate it. Here we go. All right, so just a little feedback on the volume of the piano and the microphone. If you could just help me out a little bit in the chat. I don't have Nancy hanging out with me today, so I just need to know if the volume levels are okay. Let me throw up the sheet music on your screen. And by the way, for those of you that have just joined us, Amodi, Keith, Rasmus, Peter, and the rest, for those of you that haven't checked in on the chat yet, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I am going to throw that sheet music up on your screen. Also, let me know if you've had the opportunity to download it and that the download link actually worked and you were able to get your transcription. Piano sounds great. Excellent. Thanks for the feedback. And also let me know if the vocal mic volume is okay as well and that you can hear me fine. What I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through the head transcription, because there are some things that I think you need to pay attention to in this arrangement. It was, by the way, this was not something that I wrote out and then played. This was something I played and then had Shemi Shua transcribe it for me. And I really want to start right off with this section right here, which these few bars are drop two voicings. And that's something that I use quite a lot when I'm working out tunes. So if you actually take a look at the voicings, the thing that makes this nice is because you've got this inversion, which is 1, 2. It's like second inversion of a D minor 7th chord. Just take the second note from the top, move it down to the bass, and you get this sound. So they're very different sounds. Listen, that versus this. So you get this grounding. And we're just going up the scale, right? It's a nice sound, right? We're not using 6th diminished scale here, just straight scale. And then when we get to the A7 sharp 11 chord, so what we're doing is we're reharmonizing every note. And that's what I think is key to the things that I try to do. So this is 5 of 5 of 5 of 2 minor. So think about circle of fifths. So A7, D7, and then a tritone substitution of D7, which is G, and then getting to G minor. So as an intro, I think it works really well. One more time. This is a very hollow voicing. Just B flat over A flat. Think of it like a D7 chord with a sharp or +5, and then just changing the bass note to A flat like that, and you get this hollow voicing. One more time. And then the left hand makes a nice sound here when it moves in semitones as inner voices. So you're moving from, on the G7 chord, you're going to the minor 7, minor major 7, to the minor 7, to the minor 6th. Right, this little line cliche. And that's what really makes your jazz playing stand out, really, is those combinations of like drop two voicings, little inner voices here and there. And then we just have this vamp on F. And then we're into the melody. Key to this little thing right here is take a look at the left hand here. You've got this voicing which has a cluster in the bass. So this is something that I often do. You'll notice that I don't need to put the third in the chord like that. Just this. It makes it sound more hollow, and the third is in the right hand melody. Nice sound, right? And of course, in any type of gospel, you've got grace notes, things like that. And we're just arpeggiating the bass here. Nice chord here when you get to the B half diminished seventh chord. Let me just check in and make sure everybody can. Okay, thanks for the feedback. Download is good. The sound is good, so we're off and running. Keith says, the last 3 notes of page 3 on my PDF are blurry. 3 lines. Okay, so that's because it starts a solo and there's another 9 pages of solo, which I didn't give you because it took my transcriber like 30 to 40 hours to transcribe it. And it's just not something that we can give away at this time. So you're going to get an email about how you can get your hands on the rest of it at a significant discount, which is it's sort of what we do here. I mean, when you put that much effort into something, I think free is fair. Like, I think we're giving you a fair amount of information, especially with this transcribed head section. The rest of it, you're going to have to invest in yourself at some point. Okay, so that answers that question for Keith, I hope. And Peter says, I got the coupon and downloaded the full transcription. Thank you, Paul. So there you go. So Peter is on top of it. I appreciate that, Peter. You are one of the greatest investors in yourself that I've ever seen. Love that. I love people who invest in themselves. And by the way, a lot of people ask me about how do you get to be a better piano player? I think it takes a couple of things. One, you have to create intention, which I call deep commitment. And the best way to become deeply committed is become deeply invested. As soon as you got some skin in the game, it changes everything. A lot of people try to do free YouTube videos, free this, free that. At some point, there is an investment in yourself that kind of moves you along a little faster, because if you're deeply invested, you become deeply committed. And then, of course, the second thing is just repetition, repeating the ideas over and over again until you get a result. Let's go back to the sheet music now. And we were working on this right here, where you've got this B half diminished seventh. I know it says G add 9, which is kind of the same thing. Like that. And then a 2-5 of A flat. So this 2-5 here, you'll see that in some lead sheets right here. You've got a 2-5 of A flat, B flat to E flat 7. So let's play the second line. Half diminished 7, and then the 2-5. And this is my favorite part of the reharmonization. This came, we've already talked about it actually, so this came from the intro. So this section up here, all I've done is duplicated the voicings and the intent. Sorry, this is a first time ending here. So if you actually were to repeat it, this would kind of be like first time ending, and then there'd be a repeat bar over here. But instead, we had to write out a second section because it's a little bit different when I solo over it. So think about it like this is the melody. This is the actual melody from the written out sheet music, where you're going from B flat to D to A to G. It's actually part of the melody. It actually makes a nice progression when you do that. Like that. I need to find my phone because it keeps beeping. And I need to shut off the sound. There we go. Okay. Any questions that you have about this sheet music so far, please put them in the chat. So we're on the third line here, A minor, and then this line. And then just 3, 6, 2, 5. 3, 6, 2, 5, and then back to 1. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Let's check in with you and see. Time signature is 4/4. It's on the first bar. You can see that I've covered it up, Rich. So I know that you're asking and inquiring about it. I'm just going to erase all of this right now. So you can see the time signature here. It's 4/4 time. Thanks for the comment. And Emoti has a good comment there. He says, investment or sacrifice either way is a necessary ingredient to serve up some good jazz to the people. I love that. That's great. Thank you. And yeah, Rich, 2/4, 5/4. Yeah, it's 4/4. Okay. If there are also the voice mic is slightly hot, just a bit. Okay, let me turn it down. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. If it's fixed, Peter, let me know. And I appreciate the feedback on that. So I can't tell. I have no idea how hot it is or isn't. I just have some meters here that show me approximately where it's at. And for those of you that have just joined us, Karen from Seattle and Jamie and Emoti and others, James, appreciate the fact that you're here. I'm going to go back to the sheet music right now and take this off the screen and move down to the second section. So what we're doing is we're working on the transcription of a solo that I did over this tune and posted it, and we're basically going through the transcription of the head, which I hope is helpful to you. And then we're going to talk about some soloing ideas, which I think a lot of people are here for. But I wanted to get through the main ideas on the actual head transcription because I think it's important to go through those things. So we start the second A here. I'm going to show that on your screen. Hopefully that'll work. There. Nope. That's not the right one. Is that because I've got one open? Yes. So I had two screens open. So now you can see it okay. And we're starting here at the second A section. So think of this like maybe the B section, but it's actually AABA structure. So we've got I like things like this. If you take a look at that, it's just a bunch of grace notes moved together. Gives it a little bit of a bluesy sound. Notice we're sliding down to the ninth of D minor 7 there. This is the same as before. And then going into the bridge, we've got this C7 to A plus 7. So think of it like E half diminished seventh. It's really a C7 chord, but it's also E half diminished seventh. I like things like that. So what I've done is rather than just play chords, we've added melody or passing notes to those chords. It's really nice to be able to do little melodies here and there as if you were like creating your own melodic interludes. So from the beginning of that line, and then we're into the bridge, which I need to screenshot and put up on the screen. And just to be clear, this is the actual sheet music that you're going to be downloading. For those of you that have just shown up, you'll notice that the download link is at the top of the chat. It's pinned there, and you can download it right up until the end of the session. So here we are on the bridge, starting right at the very first bar. So remember we did this? And we're right here on this chord, here. So what you have here, just from a harmonization standpoint, is you have in the key of C, you've got 2 to 6 to 2 to 5. You'll see that a lot in jazz, where you rather than just staying on the 2, right, we're going to 6 to 2 to 5, and then back to 2. Okay? So simple to start, and then we change it up with the next one. Same melody, but we change it going from here to here. Listen to this. We do this drop 2 voicing here. So this is a tritone substitution, this one, tritone of G, which is basically D flat, the sharp 11 here. So by itself, it's not that impressive, but if you play it from the beginning of the line where you're doing the simple one, it's just like call and answer, and the answer is more impressive than the call, which I think is cool. And then we've got line cliche in the left hand. So you're going from D minor 7th to D minor major 7th to D7, and then a 2/5 of A here. I like doing this tritone thing right before the F. So instead of just staying on C7, we're switching to G flat, which is the tritone substitution for C. And then the last A section. And a little bit different in the last A section, this is a nice blues lick where you've got this double stop. 2 notes played at the same time with the blues scale. So blues scale, these 2 notes going like this, which is really blues. So you hear that a lot, right? Right? Okay. So from and I'm going to have to scroll down here to get to the last little section, which really doesn't change much, I don't think. And then we'll take your questions as soon as we get to the end of this. And we're going to start on just this line right here. So you've got here's our 2/5 of A flat, going to A minor instead. And there's our vamp. Okay, so not a lot of difference in that last A section from the second A section, kind of the same. So there's not much to talk about there. Let's go back and take a look at some of your questions. I'm not sure if that's a rhetorical question. Hey, where else can you get a step-by-step breakdown of a professional jazz piano solo? Actually, this is one of the few places that I can think of online, but there you go. Thank you for pointing that out. Modi says, call and answer. Where is the answer where the answer is more impressive? One more thing of 1,000 things to learn. Still smiling, though. So let's talk about that for a second. If you've got call and answer. Here's the answer. It's not very impressive if you do that. So what you're trying to do is you're stating the melody, which is really important when playing the head. Stating the melody again is kind of redundant, so what you do is you mess around with it as much as you can. Or you could do something like this. Here's the first one. Which utilized the same chords as the first time around. It's just you're improvising a little bit on the answer. I think that's a great strategy for playing tunes like this where you've got repetition. You really want to change it up, because if you keep playing the same things, it's just not interesting for the listener. And that's really the whole goal of jazz, is to put those little melodies and turns of phrases and chord changes in there so that you can not necessarily impress the listener, but turn the listener's ear on its head, which is kind of a fun thing to do. I think Jerry is trying to pronounce Shemishwaf's name, which I think is probably a better translation than I'm putting into it, but thank you for pointing that out. And it is a great transcription as usual, which I'm so fortunate to have him on my team. I found him on the Jazz Pianist group. Interesting story about that. He posted on the Jazz Pianist group saying he was looking for a challenge. So what most people did there, if you're not a member of the Jazz Pianist group on Facebook, you really want to do that. And what people responded with in the comments was somebody would post a solo from Chick Corea, somebody posted a solo of Bill Evans. I was really the only one that posted this. I said to him, go check this recording out. It was one of the recordings that I actually put on the Jazz Pianist group. Go check this out, and if you think you can transcribe this, it's a solo piano thing, and I think it ended up being like, I don't know, 20 pages long or something. I was like, if you can transcribe this, I will put it in my store and offer it to my students worldwide and pay you to do it. And nobody else in the Jazz Pianist group was doing that. And so that's how I found him. And then he contacted me and we worked out a contract. And so now he's doing all of my transcriptions because frankly, I don't have the time or even really the ability to do it. He's got a great ear and he's very accurate in his transcriptions. So what I play, he tries to transcribe with like rubato bars and things like that. So big shout out for him to do that for us. All right. So what I want to do now is switch gears a little bit, and I want to just start talking about the general soloing concept. As you know by now, and you're smart enough to know that when you play a solo over this thing, you're going to solo over the changes. Now, it's not a good idea to start making up your own changes right away, and it's always a good idea to use changes that are acceptable not just to you but to other players as well who are on the bandstand. So I'm just showing the PDF. I can't write on this now, so actually if you can see, I'm kind of scrolling it a little bit to kind of show you the form. So it's AABA. So when you solo over this thing, the first thing that I do when I'm coming out of a rubato ending, just 1 to 5. And then I start to solo. It's a rubato solo, meaning I'm playing with the time a little bit. What am I actually doing? Well, I'm obviously using scales and enclosures and turnarounds and bebop scales, things like that. But what I'm actually doing without thinking about those things is I'm hearing the melody in my head. So it's really about that's playing in my mind while I'm doing it. So you can almost hear the melody in my playing. If you just played around the F scale, which is this, and you once in a while put in passing notes like the bebop scale, and you just did that, just that one scale over this thing, it would sound like this. Still the same notes. There's the passing note. So a lot of people get hung up on, oh, I need to play a different scale for every chord. I need to understand all the different modes within that scale. I don't know. Not in something simple like this. It's just, if you take a look at the chord changes, right? It's just really F and D minor. And then passing note, passing chords. 3, 6, 2, 5. And F scale works over all of that. And if you actually sped it up and played it swing, it would sound like this. Now, it's not the most interesting solo, but if you're looking for shortcuts, whenever you've got a progression like this, which is basically just a bunch of 3, 6, 2, 5 chords, play the root scale and you can't go wrong. It doesn't sound wrong. It doesn't sound amazing, but it does not sound wrong. And then the next step for that would be to, whenever you had passing chords like the B flat minor 7, which is on bar, at the end of bar 8, right, where you've got this 2-5 to A minor, and I'm pointing at bar 8 right here. Well, actually, there's an introduction, so it would be here. Well, yeah, it actually is. So it's bar 4, not bar 8, because there's a 4-bar introduction. So we're talking about this bar here at the end, which I can't write on the screen right now because I'm not using a screenshot. But yeah, when you've got something like that, cover those chords. So let's play the scale. Now we want to cover the 2-5. So B flat minor 9, and then E flat 9. So think about things like that when you just run lines. And that's where the interest comes in. So rather than just playing the scale over those chords, or the F scale over those chords, it works, but it's more interesting if you just cover the chord. Or coming down. Or, right, and doing like a chord and then a scale with an enclosure. Right? Fun stuff. Let's check in with you, see if there's any questions. So Alan says, in the call and answer in the bridge, why does the D flat work so well as an alternative, and where did you get the inspiration to use a D flat there? The only inspiration was this. That just sounds so traditional and gospel, really. Simple. And then I just start thinking, well, what are other chords then I could put in passing chords? And then I'm thinking, instead of G7, what's the tritone substitution? It's like D flat. So the melody note being this note, which is obviously the flat 7 of D flat. It's a third of G, but the seventh, the flat 7 of D flat. So one more time. Simple, 2 of C, right? D minor, 2 to 6, which is A7, to 2 to 5, as if we were going to 1, right? We're not going to 1, we're going back to 2. 6, and then passing chord, right? So you're going from this D minor to D flat 7, sharp 11. Cool, right? To your ears, it sounds a little bit out there, but it works because the ear is going, where did that come from? And I think that's the reason for the question. I hope that shed a little bit of light on that, Alan. And a comment, this is exactly what I need to work on, harmonizing a tune. Thanks, Paul, you're very welcome. And Modi says, this is why we come to you. You make complex things simple to understand. That's what I try to do, thank you. What's the best way to work on getting drop 2 and drop 3 under your fingers? Yeah, so the best way to do that is to think about the key of F. We're not using bebop scales at all. We're just a straight major scale. And then all you do is you take sevenths and go up the scale. So this is 1 major seventh, 2 minor seventh, 3 minor seventh, 4 major seventh, 5 7, 6 minor 7, 7 half diminished seventh, back to 1 major 7. And then all you do with those root position chords is you take the second note from the top and you move it down to down here, and play the top 3 notes with your right hand and play the lowest note with your left hand. Which sounds very different than this. That's the best way to do it. Just think about the scale that you're playing, and then you can do inversions of that. So this is root position, this is first inversion, this is second inversion. So second inversion sounds a little bit different. So you take this note, second note from the top, move it down. Okay? They're actually the same voicings, it's just you're thinking differently in terms of what the melody note is. So if the melody note were this, you're thinking about what chord is that? It's D minor. I think that's the best way to work on drop 2 voicings. Just think about the scale and think about dropping the second note from the top using 7th chords. That's really the only way to think about it. Okay? Alan says, which bebop scale are you playing when you start out in F? And the answer is this one. Yeah, he doesn't say F7, so it's F. So that's basically the flat 6 or the sharp 5. Just to pass it. You can use any passing note, really. Like you can do this, where this is the passing note, which is the flat 3. You can do flat 2, it's also. Or you can do 3. Or you can do flat 5, or sorry, sharp 5 or flat 6. You can also do flat 7. Although this one is typically reserved, this is like a dominant 7th. Dominant 7th bebop scale. But the typical bebop scale for major chords, not dominant 7th chords, is the flat 6. I hope that answers that question. I should also like to point out that there are no simple questions here. I don't look at questions and go, wow, what a beginner question. I take beginner questions. So if you're listening to this thing, because I notice it's a lot of the more advanced people participating because they want to know more advanced ideas. But if your idea is a simple thing, nobody's going to judge you for that here. And if they do, have them come talk to me. Because I want to make sure that everybody gets something out of it no matter what level you're at. Because I know that we have a number of people that aren't quite advanced to understand everything that we're doing, and all in its own good time. So if you have a question, throw it out there. Jerry says, how do you manage to effortlessly remember a tune with so many chord changes? Actually, this tune doesn't have a lot of chord changes. How do I manage? Well, first of all, I've been playing the tune Georgia forever, probably 40 years. So, and I know these melodies, and I listen to Ray Charles sing it, and I listen to Hoagie sing it, and I listen to a number of other people play it, Diana Krall, people like that. I listen. And so when you listen to a tune, you remember the melody. It's just a matter of remembering approximately the chord changes, and your ear does the rest. I mean, I think the only thing that I could say to give you the most authentic answer for myself is it's just repetition. Remember what I said earlier in the game? It takes two things to be successful. One, intention and deep commitment, and two, repetition. When you repeat something 50, 60, 100, 200, 2,000, 20,000, 200,000 times, and you know your way around chord progressions, you can hear where things are going. So you can reharmonize on the spot using alternates. So if I were to even reharmonize it further than this, I might start on B. You know what I mean? Like, I know enough about harmony to know that if the melody note matches a chord, throw that chord in there. So I could even start on. So we go from here. Like that's a 2/5 of A flat, but it matches the melody notes. And it goes to A minor. Right, and just a bunch of like tritone substitutions. So like I said, the best answer I give you is repetition, 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 and a deep commitment to know and learn and understand these tunes. And I don't have a memorization strategy other than repetition. And that's what it comes down to. Just like any classical piece. That, to me, there's a combination of remembering the tune, but also muscle memory. And then part of it is also, for something as simple as Bach, part of it is understanding what the chords are. It's like 1, and then 1 major 7, to E minor, to B minor, to E minor, to A, come up the scale, D7. So knowing what the chord changes are and kind of having a general sense of where the changes are at, the melody seems to work itself out with muscle memory. I can't sit here and go, oh, it's going from B to G to A to, it's way too, you can't do that. The right hand has to remember. So then when you get to the solo section, all you need to do is remember the chords. Okay. So, and it was just an example of another simple tune with simple chord changes that it doesn't matter how many times you've played that over the years, you can sit down after a year and play it without too much remembering. Like, it's just part of this is it was also my mother's favorite song because her name was Joy, right? Jesu, joy of man's desiring. I'm not sure why it was her favorite tune, but because it has her name in it, maybe that was it. And it's just, your fingers just sort of like remember because of repetition, and you understand the chord changes. So I hope that was quite a long answer for, I think, a fairly simple question. Rich says, really love the solo sections, Paul, and the blues to swing transition. Do you ever approach this song with stride or walking bass? Yes. Stride, I'm not, like stride for me, like I don't do these kinds of things. Yeah, it's very showy and stuff, but I find that a lot of people who do those things don't solo very well because they're always concerned about hitting the notes, and they don't really have the improvisational technique to kind of play over top of that. I think it's a lot easier to play a walking bass line and play over top of it. So for example, so for me, it's just a matter of style. I've never been one to pay much attention to the whole stride concept. Again, it's if you're doing full stride, like throwing down bass notes and then chords, like whole octaves, it's very difficult to solo over that. I'm doing half stride, which means I'm not necessarily doing this jump thing. My left arm is hurting, actually, so I'm just kind of like playing within the stride concept, but not jumping too far. So again, I'm not a master of that style. It's not something that I tend to work on. But I think the question is, do you approach the song with something different? And the answer is yes. I'm sorry, I was looking for the question. Well, I get into these things, I'm like, well, what was the question again? Right. Hopefully that's a decent explanation. Ray's playing, by the way, is very bluesy and very sparse. So if you actually listen to Ray play, it might sound something like this. very much more a bluesy, simpler style of playing. I'm a little bit more melodic in the way that I approach. He doesn't use a lot of enclosures and things like that, like this. He's more shorter lines, right, and more bluesy. Things like that. Again, I'm like, it's just, for me, I'm just listening to the albums and picking up a few things here and there. Everybody has a different style of playing. His is very different than mine, for sure. So thanks, Rich, for pointing that out. Don says, when you play the blues grace notes, do you hit both notes together and then hit the grace note finger, or do you play the grace note and sequentially before the other notes? So it's both, actually. So a lot of times what I'll do is, let's say this is, so we're going from this note to this note to this note. So we're heading to this is the melody note, and the double stop is just a fourth away. So you start out with the fifth, but you play the fifth and the first note together, and then, so those notes come after. Right? If you were doing other things like this, you could say that the grace notes are played completely before it instead of at the same time. So it's like this. Right? So they're played before you hit the note, whereas double stops is kind of like with the note and afterwards. Slowly is like, before the note sounds like this. Like, right? It's a little less double stoppy. You can still do it. That was actually with it, but you get it's a little bit different for every grace note. Let's see how many grace notes we can put in. There's what's before, right? Right? Just single notes. It's just D minor blues scale, right? So you get the idea, right? I think it's really just repetition and feel as well, and just kind of listening to that style of playing. Formulas, like I said, I pointed out a few, but there's a lot more than that, just that. So thank you for the question. Amodi called that soft shoe stride. Nice. Rich said boogied. Yeah, it's a little bit of boogie. Again, I've never... You know, like the whole boogie thing, I never really got into that much. It just seemed like everybody was doing it at one point, and I just kind of do the opposite of what most people do. I don't know why I do that. I'm just a bit of a rebel when it comes to jazz. You know, Rich, I'm going to read this question because it really makes me think of something, and then I'll play a little bit and I'll say goodbye to everyone because we got about 10 minutes left. So the question is, so when you're thinking of chords in your head, are you thinking of numbers rather than the chord names? Like a 1 chord rather than F major? The short answer is that I'm thinking of both of those. So sometimes I'll just be thinking what the chord structure is, but also at the same time, like if I wanted to transpose it to another key, I would think more in, until it was under my fingers, I would think more in numbers, like 1, and then flat 7. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's like you're transposing into another key, so you want to think numbers, and you're trying to remember the numbers in your head. You can't think, oh, in F I did this, how do I move that to G or B flat or whatever note? So that's a situation where you're thinking more. But then once you have that, it's a combination of, okay, this is the 3, 6, 2, 5, but what key am I in? That's a little more interesting, because if you just think 3, 6, 2, 5, all you're trying to do is cover chords, right? 3, 6, 2, 5 of F, or 3, 6, 2, 5 of G, right? Which is, it's the same, it's just different keys, and you play differently over those. So 3, 6, 2, 5 in F is, transpose it to G. So each key has its own sort of little quirks that work with certain things, whereas that doesn't necessarily work the way that the fingers fall on that key versus another key. So there's a combination of things, numbers plus chords. Now, the reason why I think this is interesting is somebody posted one of those massive, and this was not on the Jazz Pianist group, it was like on the, I don't know, the sheet music website or whatever group it was on Facebook. And somebody posted this really beautiful drawing of like some kind of massive circle of fifths. And as it spread out from the middle, it got more and more complicated. And then they were talking about modes and things like that. And I thought it was pretty. So I just, off the cuff, I wrote a comment that said, "This is super pretty. I'm not sure how the numbers are useful, especially in jazz." And that's all I said. I didn't go, wow, this is a terrible way to approach jazz. I didn't do it. I was just very nice about it. And I can tell you, the first comment that I got was this. Somebody wrote, first of all, that I'm an idiot. They wrote, "You're an idiot. Music is just numbers." And I'm like, you know, it's so, these social platforms are so impersonal. And for somebody to label me an idiot without Googling me or doing any research, just basically just wants to be right. And what I've found in life, and this is a philosophical thing you might want to pay attention to, I'd rather get what I want than be right. I don't think you can do both, especially if you're married. So you just don't want to be right all the time. And this is just somebody that wants to label me an idiot for a very simple comment, which says, "That's a beautiful drawing. I'm not sure how useful it is." Well, apparently I'm an idiot because music is just numbers. I can tell you with 100% of my heart and soul, Kenny Barron told me to play more with my heart. He didn't know numbers at all. He couldn't even read sheet music. So to say Kenny Barron's not a great player is a mistake, because he is. But saying that he doesn't think about it in terms of numbers and music is just numbers and it's all numbers, I don't know. That's a bit short-sighted. I can tell you that post blew up. It just blew up. From one simple comment, and there was just hundreds of responses of people on one side of it. People would jump in and say, "No, it's just numbers," and other people would say, "No, there's more to it than that," and some people were more reasonable and whatever. From me to you, it's not just numbers. You can't think about a tune like Georgia. I'm not sitting there going, okay, this is a 1, 5, 3, 7, third, back to 5, and then I throw in these two numbers. And you end up sounding like this. I don't play like that. I play like this. You know, it's melodic, and it's thought-provoking, and it's soulful, and it's all of those things that have nothing to do with numbers. So, I don't know. I just like the comment and the question because it just provoked me this week to kind of read all the people that are like, music is just numbers. And then I'm like, well, and I'm an idiot. And I basically wrote, so well, it's good to know I'm an idiot. I'll make sure I tell all the people that buy my sheet music and buy my albums and have bought 9 albums over the, I'll make sure I tell all of those people that I'm in it. So I'm telling you, apparently I'm an idiot. Okay, there you go. Yeah, Modi, I think that's a good point. Yeah, but where's the channel? Where's their channel exactly? And how many people join in there every Saturday? There's no one. There's just people trying to be right. They don't have what they want, so they'd rather be right. The great pianist Gene Harris. Yeah, I actually thought about covering some Gene Harris in an upcoming episode, so thanks for reminding me to do that. Tom says, idiots don't offer your vast piano knowledge weekly like you do. Your Kenny Barron reference was spot on. Yeah, thank you so much. So in the time that we have left, I'm going to play a little bit more. I love to play at the end of these sessions. I'll come back and say and bid you farewell. I hope everybody had a chance to get to the sheet music. Please go grab it while it's still there. The link is at the top, pinned to the chat. So go and do that. I'll play a little bit. For those of you that want to stick out with me or hang out with me for another 5 minutes, I'm going to try to put some Paul Tobey into this one. All right, thanks for hanging out with me. And for everybody who's here, Amodi, Tom, James, Steve, King Sax, whose name I can never remember for some reason. I'm not sure why. Don, Jerry, and I just scrolling up the list now. So you know who you are, and I appreciate every single one of you for showing up for these Saturday things. It makes my life very special. And I bid you farewell. Make sure you grab the sheet music. I'm about to pull it down. Thanks, everyone, for your time, and we will see you all next Saturday.